evening. Good to be with you guys. Good time to be together when the theme is kind of friendship and the theme is God's grace. There's no better thing. And I thank you for being here. There's many things you probably could have done today, but I think we've chosen the better thing in the way that we're going to open what we believe to be God's Word, His revelation, His understanding and wisdom that He's going to give to us through His written Word. It's an amazing time that we can spend together. And this evening we're going to be going into the Gospel of Luke, the 5th chapter. So if you have your Bibles, please turn there. Now in the Bible, there's in the New Testament, there's the first 4 books, which are a witness or people who are going to talk about the life of Jesus Christ, the gospel of Jesus Christ, the good news of Jesus Christ. And Luke is just one of 4 witnesses, 4 writers that God has used to tell the story of Jesus Christ, the greatest expression of God's grace. So we're going to be looking into a particular passage, kind of unpacking it a little bit, maybe gleaning some things off of it, and focusing on what God wants us to learn about Him, ourselves, and how His grace works in our lives. Just as a review and background, Luke begins to tell the story, obviously, from the beginning, right? From Jesus' birth. And, this is a season in which we're meditating on that and thinking about the birth of Jesus Christ. And as chapter 3 comes in, we see the ministry of John the Baptist and the baptism of Jesus Christ. In chapter 4, we see Jesus do an amazing thing as our second Adam begins to battle Satan, battle the devil, and it pushes forward. The story moves on, and Jesus begins to make his public ministry, the birth of his public ministry, to go out and begin to minister to people out in the open. He was quiet for his first 30 years of life, and now he begins to start this public ministry. And in it, we see amazing things in these first chapters, where we see Jesus have power over the physical and over the spiritual worlds. With the Word, he can command disease to be ridden from and make somebody completely whole and completely healthy. With the Word, he can cast out demons. He can do amazing things, and he begins to show himself as the Messiah in that way. And then in chapter 5, we see him to begin to call men. Begin to do what really God has done all the way going back since the beginning. To call people out, people to himself to do the work of God. And we begin to see kind of a bizarre thing, because God, in the ministry of Jesus Christ, when he begins to call men out, he doesn't call the ones you would think he would call. He calls fishermen. Not the religious leaders of the day, not the people who had amazing knowledge of Scripture, but simple fishermen. He grabs them and is going to infuse his power in them and teach them, and they're going to be an important foundations to the church and to the Christian faith. And we see Peter and Andrew and James and John begin to leave all things and begin to follow Jesus Christ. And then we see an amazing thing just previous to the scripture we're going to deal with tonight, of a man who was paralyzed for whatever reasons, and his 4 friends bring him to Jesus because they know who could help him. And faith is put on great display. Rebellion is put on great display. But the power of Jesus is expressed in that passage to heal the spiritual and the physical and to give forgiveness of sins. So that's what brings us up to this particular part. And what the gospel does, it reveals many things, but it reveals the nature of God. It reveals some things about ourselves that we will consider tonight, and it tells us certainly about his grace, the theme. And we're going to see the people of this passage, there's 2 different groups here, are going to ask the same question. What is this grace? What are we dealing with? Who is this Jesus? Our passage is going to be verses 27 through 32, the calling of Levi. In verses 27 to 28, we see the calling of this Levi. And then in verses 29 and 30, we're going to see there's a controversy over this. There's a controversy over Jesus Christ and what he's doing. And then in verses 31 and 32, we're going to see Jesus' response to that controversy. So let's go ahead and read our passage. We're in Luke, the 5th chapter. We're going to start at verse 27, and we'll read down to 32. And after these things he went forth, and saw a publican named Levi, sitting at the receipt of custom. And he said unto him, Follow me. And he left all, rose up, and followed him. And Levi made him a great feast in his own house. And there was a great company of publicans and of others that sat down with them. But their scribes and Pharisees murmured against his disciples, saying, Why do ye eat and drink with publicans and sinners? And Jesus answering said unto them, They that are whole need not a physician, but they that are sick. I came not to call the righteous, but to sinners to repentance. That's a powerful scripture. It's a scripture we need to realize as Christians. There's much to learn from it. And if you are not a believer, there is much to learn about what God is relentlessly after. He's relentlessly after the salvation of your soul. We go back to verse 27, 28. It is the calling of this man named Levi. In verse 27, it says, after these things. What things? Oh, right after the episode that just previously happened. The amazing miracle of this paralyzed man being able to be healed and walk away. So this happening right at the heels of that. And Jesus, this little phrase, let's consider this. He went forth. From where? From Peter's house, where this happened. Mark says, his account says that Jesus went forth again to the seaside, and all the multitude resorted unto him, and he taught them. So Jesus begins to go out of the house where this amazing miracle happened, and begins to do again the thing we catch him doing, is teaching people. It's important to notice that he didn't just stay in Peter's house. That healing was amazing. I mean, that was a great climax. It was kind of a drop the mic moment where you're just like, wow, that is amazing. This could have lasted a week or two to satisfy us and or have us be amazed for a month. We wouldn't need another miracle, but Jesus, like I said, is relentless. He doesn't stop. I mean, that was an amazing thing that happened last night, but he goes forth, begins teaching, and he leaves Peter's house to go and move on. The need to move on and go. Jesus, before he left, commissioned his church. What did he tell us to do? Sit in our pews and just let the weeks and the months and the years and the decades go by? No, he told us as a church to go. I've taken claim over the whole world. My church, you need to go and make disciples of all nations, right? That is the command. And we see what Jesus is doing that very thing. He's relentless. He's going to go teach and minister to the people. So while he's going forth, who does he see? A publican. What does that mean? We may not understand what exactly a publican is, especially if we haven't spent much time around the New Testament or the Gospels. But it's simply a tax collector. Those who would buy a tax franchise, right? It's a business opportunity that they had in those days. Not like a franchise of McDonald's, but a franchise that you would allow to be a person who would collect taxes. And what they would do is that they would pay the taxes up front. And I'm going to take care of the taxes up front. I'm going to pay you, and then I'm going to go and collect from the people. So these people were hated. You thought you hated the tax man. This was worse for those people back 2,000 years ago. Because they were a hated people, more so than today. They were collecting taxes for Rome, right? As we open the pages of the New Testament, the world that we're viewing is a nation that has been occupied by the Romans. And we know enough about history and about the Romans and things like that. They are occupied by Romans, and they're serving Rome and Caesar. And all the abuses that are happening in the streets, in the neighborhoods, to their children, their women, their husbands, their uncles, their grandfathers, all those people, all the abuses, they're funding through their taxes. You thought our taxes were going for evil things. Their taxes went for some serious evil things. Pagan, violent, perverted things, right? These people were hated. They would take advantage of charging even even more to their own brethren. So they would buy this tax franchise, pay off the taxes, collect, but they were going to charge more. They were going to take advantage of the situation. Right? They were going to go ahead and charge a little bit more so they could put it in their pockets. And it was, back then, it was forbidden for Jewish people to go and have such dealings with these Gentiles. And here we see these Jewish folks collecting for Rome and for Herod Antipas. So they saw these people as traitors, shady people, unclean people, sinners, outcasts. We don't want to hang out with these people. They betrayed everything that we stand for nation, for God, for family. They've forsaken all of it, and we don't want to be anywhere in an arm's length of these people, right? We don't like them. They're traitors. So these are the type of people that wouldn't care what people thought. They were willingly going to be outcasts. They had come to a point, let's try to unpack this a little bit, that how does a person become from just a regular run-of-the-mill Jewish guy back 2,000 years ago to a tax collector who's hated? Well, I think there's a road to that. I think they came to a point of their lives where they were willing to abandon everything, including their faith, including with their families and their heritage. They could see all the evil around, the shadiness that was already happening, the violence in the neighborhood, and the government who can't do anything about it. God seemed to be maybe on a vacation. You hear that? It's the biggest thing. Where is God when all this violence is happening, all this evil is happening? Where is God? Israel seems to be in trouble, and our God seems to be on vacation, and religion seems to be a fool's game. Why should I be going to church on Sunday when it doesn't do us any good? We pray and pray and pray, and nothing changes. And there doesn't seem to be any exit from this. So I believe these people changed their worldview, changed their attitude, and begin to get pragmatic. In other words, if you can't beat them, let's go ahead and join them. Let me do what's good for me then. I'm going to look out for myself, and let me take advantage of this situation, because this whole religion thing is just mumbo jumbo. Moses, he died hundreds if not thousands of years ago. This is the here and now, and I'm going to take care of myself, right? And why not make a profit in it? I mean, obviously, the lure of becoming a tax collector is that you got some money, right? Greed is involved here. And then you use that whole situation as a rationale to do some pretty gangster stuff. Because this is the kind of people we're dealing with. Extortioners. People who are just thugs and gangsters, right? So they wouldn't care what people thought. They would have to endure ridicule from all their neighbors and their families, the hatred, all of that. Then they would have to be okay with not worshiping anymore. But there's the tragedy. They found it empty. They went and abandoned not only their heritage as Israel, but yet they're abandoning their worship of God, because they would be deemed unclean. They couldn't come in. They were the opposite of being a patriot. They're a traitor, right? They're serving Rome, not God. They're not a worshiper of God. They're okay with that. And we're not going to deal with the silliness anymore. So Jesus comes out from what was amazing, comes out forth, begin to teach, and he sees somebody, right? He sees this publican, and he looks at him and observes him, and he sees him sitting at the receipt of custom. This would be the customs house, the toll booth, the tax booth, right? Right by the seaside there in Capernaum, next to the Sea of Galilee. It was the place where the taxes were collected from the travelers and from the fishermen, because there's a lot of trading going on, right? So you have these people bringing in fish. Well, guess what you got to do? Pay the tax man right off the bat. There was this whole fishing business and local syndicate that the tax people probably really took advantage of. A lot of trading. There's a trade route going through Galilee, in particular by Capernaum, that he could easily be taking a lot of money. So this is where Jesus finds him. He finds this publican sitting in that booth. Jesus encounters him doing what he does. He's on the job right now, right? He's sitting at the tax office. And then we get this person's name, the publican ring kind of familiar to us because it's one of the 12 sons of Jacob, one of the tribes, the tribe of Levi, that we often hear mentioned in the Bible. Even Jesus himself had two ancestors named Levi. Mark's account tells us his daddy's name. This is what's great when you have not only Luke, but you also have Mark and Matthew, all telling some of the story. Mark tells us that his name was Alphaeus. This was Levi, the son of Alphaeus. So anytime dad is mentioned in Scripture, it's good to notice. It's good to note that, right? Dads, future possible dads, your job is to raise up godly seed, to be the head of the house, if and when you engage in marriage, you are to reach your hand out to your wife and say, hey, listen, I'm going to lead in a God-glorifying direction. Please come with me and be my helpmate. And if God blesses us with kids, we're going to raise up godly seed for the glory of God. And here we see this is the son of somebody, Alphaeus, a dad. Why is that even mentioned? I think it adds to the drama of Levi's abandonment of his life, of his previous life, of him being Jewish, abandoning his faith, abandoning the things that his dad probably taught him since he was a little kid. The things of Moses, the writings of the Psalms and of the prophets and the scriptures, teaching him since he was probably a baby, taking him to church, taking him to the synagogue. And here we see that this is someone's son. This is the son of Alphaeus. But we know him by a different name, Levi. Because Mark's account in chapter 9, verse 9, he tells us it's Matthew. What we're meeting here in the passage is one of the apostles, the apostle Matthew, whose name means gift of God. He's going to be one of the 12 apostles, and many of the apostles had two names. He had like a regular name, he usually had a nickname. Probably the most famous is Simon, Jesus changes his name to Peter, Cephas, right? Levi may have gotten his name Matthew from his dad. We don't know. I'm not sure. But I like to think he got it from Jesus. Jesus is able to see past what we are able to. It's easy for us to go look at the people who we think are sinners and downtrodden and just made a wreck of their lives. Jesus can see through that, and he sees them this is how Jesus sees them. You're the gift of God, and I'm going to transform your life, and I'm going to turn this around. You're going to be a major player in the church. That's the business God is in. He can see past things, take a brother or a sister who's downtrodden, and transform their lives through the power of his Holy Spirit, by the power of the gospel, by the power of his grace. So this is not Levi, the tax collector, the publican. This is Matthew, the gift of God. The gift of God. I like to think that. I don't know. It doesn't say that. But I like to think Jesus called him Matthew. Could have been his dad. I don't know. But he has something to tell this brother. Follow me. Follow me. Jesus sees him and commands him. Commands him to join him and accompany him. He's asking him to leave everything and join him as a disciple, to come under his tutelage, to go on this a couple years of this seminary training. Jesus is going to teach them and empower them and send them loose to establish churches and establish the faith. Asking him to leave everything behind. Pretty radical. That's a proportionate reaction to the grace of God. It almost calls for a radical response to it. The giving up of everything. And in many things, we're called to do just that. Right? So what is Levi's response in verse 28? So he left all. Rose up and followed him. Followed Jesus. So he left all. It means to forsake everything, to drop it. Again, to abandon. Once again, Matthew is going to abandon his worldview again. But coming back home now, right? He's coming back in the right direction. He's going to abandon his worldview, his occupation, his lifestyle, which I'm sure was decades of just thuggery, of just total gangster stuff that he was doing. Now Jesus is going to transform him And now he's calling them out, drop it, and abandon your lifestyle once again. And follow me. So why this sudden change? Why does he leave all and do this? Well, it's not because Jesus was necessarily a good-looking guy. The Bible says otherwise. That he would just walk by him and wouldn't even realize you walked by him, right? It wasn't because this move would benefit him in any way. He was making loads of money, I'm sure, right? I'm sure he was making plenty of money. It wasn't because it was going to benefit him financially. But I think what we need to realize is that there's, in previous chapters, in chapter 3, in verse 12 and 13, is when we talk about John the Baptist's ministry. Then came also, this is talking about those who came to be baptized and asked questions and wanted to go seek out John. Then came also publicans, tax collectors, to be baptized, and said unto him, Master, John, talking to John, what shall we do? And he said to these guys, exact no more than which is appointed to you. You're converted, I'm going to baptize you, and this is how you're transformed life. I'm not going to tell you stop being a tax collector, but stop being a thug and do what's right and just collect what they owe. You're in a great position to be a blessing to your neighbors. You're in a good position to be a blessing to Israel. You don't have to take advantage of them. Do what's honest. You'll be the only honest one in that occupation to God's glory. I believe Matthew's one of these folks who came to John to be baptized, converted, and now he's meeting Jesus, and Jesus is calling to something even more. Calling him to drop everything now and push it a little bit more. Because there's something else, another vocation I'm calling you to now. Right? I'm calling you to the ministry of apostleship. And I think part of the reason, he could have been John the Baptist's ministry, but now Jesus spent a lot of time in Capernaum, right? And Matthew is a tax collector in Capernaum, so he must have heard Jesus teach. He must have saw and heard about Jesus' performing of miracles. And I'm almost certain that he was there at the big catch, where Jesus allowed Peter, Paul, and Andrew, and all, John, and James to collect so much fish that the nets were busting and the boats were sinking. And as they're coming to shore, who's the first person who's going to notice that? It's going to be the tax man. And he's probably never seen something like this before. Here Jesus is calling these 4 fishermen to follow him. And he blesses them so much that their families are going to be taken care of in the next couple of years because of how much the catch was, all this fish that they caught. And he sees this. Matthew is seeing this. So then I believe also it's his calling. We are dealing with a converted tax collector. But now we'll go beyond John's instruction of just being simply honest. Now Levi is being called to something more radical. He's willing to leave it behind because he says he rose up. He got up from that tax booth and he began to follow Jesus. He began to follow him officially as a disciple. And then the next section is verse 29 and 30, the controversy of what Jesus is doing. Verse 29 says, then Levi gave him a great feast in his own house. Levi gave Jesus something to honor him, to express his gratitude, because that's the Christian life, that we experience guilt, we experience God's grace, and then we live a life of gratitude. Matthew is showing that. So he wants to show gratitude to Jesus, and he throws a big feast, a great feast, a banquet, a reception, great in the way that its size and its degree. It's a kind of what we might say a splendid affair, right? He knew how to throw a party, right? And it's in his own house, his own money, his own wealth that he's spending this on for Jesus. He offers his house up for the occasion. He doesn't care what happened to Peter's house, which pretty much got destroyed from the brothers taking the paralyzed guy up in the roof and started tearing through, right? No, I don't care about that. The last party last night, the roof caved in, right? Trying to get somebody to Jesus. I'm going to offer at my house. That's what Christians do. We show hospitality. We want you into our house. We want to be friendly. I love it. You guys go. We don't have that tradition at Grace where we get up and we shake each other's hands. I love that. That is great. That is part of fellowship, right? And here he's offering up his house for this occasion, using his house as an instrument for Jesus' ministry. Right? So your house, where God has given you, allow God to be glorified in it by allowing him to use that as an instrument to reach the unbelievers, the unbelieving world. And maybe Bible studies, I don't know. Open your house to hospitality, just to be friendly. Right? It's not when you come on over for dinner, I'm going to take my biggest Bible and hit you over the head, right? We're not necessarily called to that. We want to get to, we share the gospel, but we want to be hospitable. We want to show Christian charity and love to our friends, whether they're believers or not, because we have the love of Christ over them, right? And it says, and there's something about this part. There's a detail that makes it controversial. And there were a great company of publicans and others who sat down with them. A great company, a great number. Mark says, for there were many. Right? There's a lot of people here. Levi must have had a lot of friends, and the kind of friends that he could only have. Downtrodden, shady people. People you don't want to introduce mom to, right? Those kind of folks, right? As he describes it, fellow publicans, tax collectors, the scorn of the earth there, right? Those who have done some pretty shady stuff and are all assembled here with Levi at his house. But there's also and others. What does that mean? There's tax collectors, publicans, and others. Well, those were maybe acquaintances of Levi, of Matthew. Those who would hang out with tax collectors, so you can imagine what kind of people would want to hang out with tax collectors and try to, for whatever reason, kind of benefit from that. I would think worldly types, rough around the edges. Mark tells us simply there were sinners. And actually, that's what the Pharisees' assessment in verse 30 is, that there's sinners. Matthew tells us this in his account. Behold, take notice and pay close attention. There was publicans and sinners there. Mm-hmm. That was the focus. Matthew's telling us, behold. I mean, it's amazing. Hey, man, Levi, he's Matthew now. And he's down. He wants to go with Jesus. But Matthew says, listen, I was there. Behold. It was amazing. There was tax collectors and there was sinners there. And they sat down with them. They became participants in this feast. They sat and broke bread with Jesus, with Matthew and the other disciples. They came down, and maybe it was because of curiosity that they came, but they came because of Jesus. Right? This was not like the normal party Levi would throw or Matthew would throw. This was about Jesus. This was going to be a Bible study real quick. They're going to eat. They're going to talk about some things. He's going to put forth the gospel, no doubt. And verse 30 says something people didn't like it. Because in verse 30 it says, but their scribes and the Pharisees. Who are these Pharisees? These were kind of the conservative, legalistic sect of the Jewish religion back in those days. The controlling party of like the religious teaching of that day. The scribes were those who were in charge of writing down the law, and they were in charge of teaching the law to the people. And it says their scribes, right? The Pharisees and their scribes. So maybe these were belonging either to the Pharisees, but I think what's being taught is that these were the very people who was teaching that community at that time. If you were going to go to church on Sunday, you would see these folks teaching the people, and they have a problem because it says they murmured. The idea is that they complained, they grumbled, and the verb has the idea that they continued in this action of grumbling and murmuring about what is happening. And they murmured against Jesus' disciples. See, they weren't brave enough to ask Jesus himself, or they were either too pious to enter the house of a tax collector, but they went ahead and attacked the disciples. Some of these were newly converted, novices to scriptures, and probably unable to, clash swords with these titans of knowledge of Moses and things like that. But this is what sin does. This is what evil looks like. They attack the newly converted. It attacks and it against the things of God. What they're asking is, what is this grace? There's two groups here who are asking that question. The tax collectors and the sinners came to see Jesus because they had a question. What is this grace? Right? And now the scribes and the Pharisees are asking the same question. What is this that's going on? What grace is this? What is this? We don't like it. We don't like it. Right? They're murmuring. They're grumbling against this. And they get right to the point. They were saying, why do ye eat and drink with publicans and sinners? Are you guys hanging out? You're hanging out with and breaking bread with tax collectors and sinners? This is not becoming of a religious leader. This Jesus you're following, that's not what a religious leader or a rabbi should be doing. Matthew's account says they were asking, why does your teacher do this? Mark says it this way. How is it that he, Jesus, is doing this? It echoes the things of the Garden of Eden where Satan himself asked, has God indeed said this? Right? It's that lie that keeps getting repackaged. But sin will attack leadership. It's human nature. Your pastor is in a position of attack. So he needs your prayers, he needs your support, he needs your participation, right? He needs you. He needs you because he's being attacked. He's just up there. And that's why, ladies, that's one reason why we don't want our women up in leadership position, because we protect our women. It's not that our women are inferior in any way. Our women are spiritual types themselves. Now they're these sage women who are able to speak wisdom and understand the things of God and understand the things of the gospel and of scriptures. But we protect our women. I'm not going to allow my wife to come up and be attacked. You know what I mean? That's our responsibility. We'll take it. But we need the church to be supportive of our leaders. And this is what's happening. We can see it right here. They're attacking the pastor, and they're going through the newly converted. Why does your pastor do that? These are wolves that are hanging out. One of your pastor's main job is to kick away the wolves from you, right? Right? So allow him to do that. So that is what's happening here. They don't like this. They don't like the fact that Jesus and his disciples are associating with such people. They're asking the question, what grace is this? It's not how we see how God's grace is bestowed. Usually you're supposed to act religious, and then the people tell you how great you are. That's how we think grace should work. I have people love me in the community because they think I'm a good guy, I'm moral, and I'm all these. That's not how God's grace gets bestowed. It gets bestowed through the redemptive works of Jesus Christ and Jesus Christ alone. Yeah. That's the gospel. In verse 31, the last part here, Jesus responds. That's how good of a shepherd he is. It says, Jesus answering, he's going to answer their question. Something is amiss with them. There's an ignorance in their theology. Their understanding of man, their understanding of God and of salvation is amiss. They're ignorant of many things. And Jesus answering said unto them, Jesus is not going to do what the cowardly did. He is going to speak to them directly. The good shepherd coming to the aid of his disciples, because like I said, there's wolves among us. And he's going to answer it. And he first begins to answer unto them and say unto them, he starts with an analogy. He says, they that are whole need of, they that whole, oh my gosh, I think I copied this wrong. But yeah, they that are whole need not a physician, but they that are sick, right? So, this is the experience of sickness and health. We all understand what this analogy is talking about. It's the aid of a physician. The idea of someone being whole is where we get our word, it's a Greek word where we get our word hygiene. The idea is that it's those who are healthy. Their bodies are in balance. They're whole. It's functioning properly. They don't need a physician. They don't need a doctor because there's nothing for the doctor to do. They're fine. But he says, but they that are sick need the physician. Right? So he uses that analogy to get to the point of why he is doing what he's doing. They have a misconception. And then there's the direct answer in verse 32. The question is why you and your disciples are hanging out with these people. Jesus brings up his calling, his purposes. He says, I came not. So in other words, I'm going to tell you first what I didn't come to do, and then I'm going to tell you what I came to do. So the purpose of this condensation to this coming down to a cursed earth to dwell with fallen man, right? Fallen mankind is going to be addressed here. Why he left his glory to clothe himself in flesh, he's going to say right here. He's going to tell them it wasn't for this, it was because of this. And he tells them it was not to call the righteous. Focus is not on those who are well. And that's where they're getting messed up. The Pharisees and the scribes thought they were in their religious piousness, or I don't know if that's even a word, but they're so pious and moral and goody-good and went to church every day and knew the Bible upside down that somehow they were going to get justified by that. Somehow they're going to win God's favor by that. They're going to be blessed by that. And that they were righteous and just and all these things. And Jesus is telling them, you're mistaken. But let me tell you, the reason why I came down off my throne was not for the righteous, but for sinners. His focus is on those who are enslaved to sin. He came as a great physician. We should, we see him busy teaching and ministering to all these kinds of people. We see him after page of the gospel doing this very thing, ministering to the outcast people, lepers, those who are demon-possessed, all kinds of things that are happening. People who have a horrible reputation. All kinds of people he's ministering to, healing them, converting and transforming their lives. And he wants to bring these sinners to repentance, to turn them around, bring them to confession, bring them to make a U-turn in their lives, to justify them, to sanctify them, to glorify them. That's the beauty of the gospel. Amen. The beauty of the gospel is that Jesus himself came down and clothed himself and did the work which none of us could do. That's right. Where Adam fell, where Israel fell, where Moses falls, where all these people fall, where the religious leaders of this day fell, where I fall, where your pastor falls, Jesus never fails. Amen. Never fails. He's 100%. He's our second Adam. He's wonderful. He does everything correct. So that is the beauty of the gospel. And that is the means of grace in which he is offering up. It's the great news in which us as the church will proclaim to everybody, because you can't shut us up. Because it's great news that salvation has come down to man. So let's think about some of the conclusions and maybe some applications here. First, we must realize the reality of sin in our lives. Amen. All of us here, we deal with it. We are sinners by nature, whether you are a Christian or not. We commit sin. We rebel towards God and rebel towards his law. We make a wreck of our lives. We too have our justifications and our reasons why we do the shady stuff that we do. Probably more, hopefully more before you were converted than you are now as a Christian. But this is human nature. We could justify any sin. No matter how great or how little, what a white lie or perjury in a court of law will make our justifications and our rationale for those things. We must come to a point where we are honest about our sins. We have to confess it, repent from it, because it's the doorway to salvation. It's the key to coming to Christ, something the Pharisees didn't understand. In fact, Matthew's account in chapter 19, verse 13 says, but he's talking to the Pharisees, but go ye and learn what this means, what this meaneth. I will have mercy and not sacrifice. He addresses it. Matthew's account, it's the same passage, but Matthew's account tells us Jesus is addressing their ignorance, their faulty thinking. They thought they were righteous. What you don't get is you're a sinner just like all these sinners that are in Matthew's house right now. You should come in and join us and hear the good news, hear the gospel, and your life needs to be transformed as much as these people of ill repute, right? Of these people who have bad reputations and have done bad things, you're in the same boat. They didn't understand that. One of the most convicting scriptures, and I'm almost reluctant to read it because it doesn't make me feel good, but it's the truth. It's the truth. Romans, the 3rd chapter, verses 9 through 20. Paul is writing this letter to the Romans, and he's going to collect all these Old Testament scriptures to give us a mirror of who we are as mankind. Amen. And this is not going to feel good at all. I'm going to give the warning right off the bat, okay? What then? Are we better than they? This is the struggle in our passage. Are we better than they? No, in no wise. For we have before proved, both Jews and Gentiles, that they are all under sin. As it is written, here comes the scriptures. Okay, hang on, all right? Get your seatbelt on, all right? All right. There is none righteous. Right? No, not one. There is none that understandeth. There is none that seeketh after God. They are all gone out of the way. They are altogether become unprofitable. There is none that doeth good. No, not one. Their throat is an open sepulchre. With their tongues they have used deceit. The poison of asp is under their lips, whose mouth is full of cursing and bitterness. Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their ways. And the way of peace have they not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes. Now we know that what things soever the law saith, it saith to them who are under the law, that every mouth may be stopped, and all the world may become guilty before God. Therefore, by the deeds of the law there shall no flesh be justified in his sight. For by the law is the knowledge of sin. So when God says through his word, thou shalt not lie, he means that. But what the purpose of him telling us is telling what his truth is, what's the standard, and to show that we lie. God says that thou shalt not lie. Guess what? I've been lying since I was a kid. This was a baby. And I was lying, the first people I was lying to was my parents. Right? And we broke God's law. And it's actually a blessing. It's a means of grace in which God is, look it. Let's get real. Let's get serious about our sin. And this is one of the things we must glean from our passage, that there is a reality of sin in our lives. And we saw what rebellion looks like. That's the other thing. It's self-righteous. It attacks others. We know who the bad people are. The people who we are better than. The drug addict, the drunk, the person who beats his spouse, or all these people. And that is awful. That is evil. That is evil, right? But we use it not to, hey, let me help. We use it to be self-righteous. I want to feel better about myself because I'm not like them. At least I'm better than them, right? It attacks the sheep. It attacks the newly converted. It brings into question the character of God. It puts, trip out on this, that it puts God on the puts him on the judgment seat, and that is just simply backwards. Right? God should be judging us, not the other way around. We don't put him down and judge God of who he is and why we feel like he hasn't done what he's supposed to do. That is what sin and rebellion looks like. And we've all have done a portion or degree of that in our lives, many times before our conversion and probably after as well. But God doesn't leave us there. This is the beauty of the gospel. The other thing we need to realize is the power and the beauty of the gospel. Jesus is in the business of dealing with sinful men. Right? He is in the business of doing that. Probably the most famous scripture, we see that at the football games, John 3:16 and 17. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him, in Jesus, should not perish. Right? But have everlasting life. For God sent not his Son into the world to condemn the world, but that the world through him might be saved. Here's the gospel. All of us are unprepared to meet God on Judgment Day. You will be judged by God, and all all of us left alone to our own devices, to our own actions, to our own inner thoughts, the wants and desires of our hearts will be judged one day. The secret things of the mind will be judged one day. And all of us left to our own devices and left to ourselves are unprepared to meet our God. But God in his mercy and his love sent his only begotten Son to come down and clothe himself like us in flesh, live among us, and live the life that none of us here could live. Morally, religiously, everything. He is perfect, and he's so obedient. He went on that cross to pay for the sins that you and I commit. He takes the wrath of God for it. He takes the heat. He takes the punishment. He takes on the wrath of God as this God wrath sponge. I know Tasso. I know his sins. And I'm going to take God's wrath that he deserves on the cross. And what blows everything away is that he just didn't die. He rose again from the dead. Game, set, match, right there. Our Savior rose from the dead. So we may have complete faith of who he said he is and what promises he's given us. That we can be saved if we put our faith and trust in him. If you're a Christian, we must do what Matthew has done. Right? There should have a genuine response to Jesus, to answer the call of what he's calling you to do, to live a life of gratitude and give complete lordship over to Jesus Christ as your Savior. I don't know what the need is as we prepare for a song, but if God has put anything on your heart, if anything has been revealed through the preaching of the Word, through the reading of the Word, God has put that on your heart, not me. So you don't have to go through me and tell me all the awful things. You go to God right now in prayer in response to what we've read today. So we need to respond. If it's just singing, sing loud as you can. But if you feel that you are in danger of hellfire, which you deserve, the promise to you is that Jesus Christ is the answer. Repent, confess those sins, repent from your sins, and put your full faith in the redemptive works of Jesus Christ. His life, death, and resurrection. The promise of the word is that, the promise of the gospel is that you will be saved. And if there's something in your life that needs to be confessed as a Christian, confess it, and he's faithful and just to forgive us of all sins. So what are we singing? Let's go ahead and stand, and we'll sing I Surrender All. Whatever the need is, you have an altar, we're at your pew, it's a time for prayer, it's a time for response. Sing as loud as you can.
396.
Number 396. convicted about the right things, and give it all to Jesus Christ. Man, that's who you need to give it to, right? Just know that you're loved. You're loved by your pastor, by your church. Don't walk out here thinking you're unloved. You people love each other, right? And we love you, and that this is the Christian, it's the church. It's what the church is all about. I just pray that God continues to use you guys as an instrument of reaching to this community, and that you would just work powerfully in converting of souls and all those things. And I just pray that God blesses you, keeps you, and just that His goodness will shine upon you. I love you, and thank you for the opportunity. And